It's the Masters Tour in Las Vegas, and we are amidst round number 1 here. We're doing some bonus coverage that we have in matches coming up. But that's admirable, and I'm joined by Frodan here in this one. And Frodan, we've been having some fireworks. Yakto taking down Sinto Lal 2-0 in round number 1, and we're going to be hopping into Blitzchung taking on Language Hacker in this one. Language Hacker currently up a game.
Yeah, it's really exciting to be here. The atmosphere and the intensity of just how quiet everything gets when competition really begins, and then when the rounds are ending and players are standing up and talking to each other, energy just shoots right back up. It's a really nice pendulum swing back and forth, and I'm really looking forward to see how the field continues to shape up in round number 1. We're going to be jumping in mid-game number 2 in one of our series here for round number 1, and I'm really excited to see what's going to happen, because I think we have a Hunter versus Mage between Language Hacker and Blitzchung. So this is a match between Grandmasters from the Asia Pacific, for people who are not familiar. And Language Hacker, of course, making the top 8 of the World Championships earlier this year in Taiwan.
Yeah, and kind of taking a look at this game right here with Mage versus Hunter, I think this is one of the metagame calls in the tournament that really ended up shaping up some things here, where if players are going to be playing Warrior and players are going to be playing Mage to counter it, Hunter can be a very strong call in that one. We apologize for the tech issue on the top hand that's taking place there with the Mage displaying as a Hunter hand in that one. These games are, they're secondary matches that are meant for features. So if match number 1 we have on feature takes a long duration, we're going to get to a close of round number 1 by that point. But we have backup matches for it. This is one of the ones we're looking at in this one.
Yep, that's right. We'll be providing coverage throughout all of the Masters Tour event. If you guys are familiar with the playoffs from the previous years, we would be doing lots of this kind of coverage. So we don't have like the player cams, we don't have necessarily all the works there. But the importance is that this is bonus coverage as the round is finishing. And if you guys want to follow along with us, you could go to battlefight.com/HSEsports, get up-to-date information on the standings, what decks they're playing, maybe even get some record history on like what their secondary and tertiary decks are. So taking a look at Mage versus Hunter, a lot of people look at Mage being a class that was touted as the #1 class for a long time, Admirable, and then Warrior and Rogue kind of mixing into there. Where does Hunter fit in all this picture? Where does it really counter? Does it beat things like Mage?
I think it does. I think that it's strong against Mage for A, its ability to pressure, and then B, its ability to actually swing Giants turns. You take a look at like Timberwolf Unleash the Hounds. That is a turn that can actually kill 2 Giants if you have some amount of pressure on board. And you couple that with like a Scavenging Hyena, for instance, you're looking at a major swing turn where you can turn that back around. And so that to me is a big call from Blitzchung here. He anticipated a lot of Warrior. That part's checked. Mage to be the strong counter to it. That part has also come to fruition in a lot of these spots. It's still not necessarily touted as the fact that Mage definitively has the advantage, but I definitely think you can build it that way. And taking a look at Language Hacker's list, he's brought a Luna's Pocket Galaxy here to this tournament. So if you expect Warrior to be the deck, that means that Rogues are going to fall to those Warrior decks. It means that Mages are going to be farming those Warriors. It means that Hunter could be in a position to take advantage of the Warrior and Mage matchups that are dominating.
Yeah, Luna's Pocket Galaxy recently buffed from 7 mana to 5 mana. From the Boomsday Project. This is a legendary spell that says all your minions in your deck are now costing 1 mana. It's very cheap, so you have things like the Archmage Antonidas, the Alexstrasza, a Caligos, all these really expensive legendary dragons or big powerful tempo plays are now 1 mana available to you. And this is a big event for several reasons. One, because it is wide scale changes from 18 cards of the expansion out of 130, so that, more than 10% of the cards just got straight up buffed. But it's also unprecedented. We've never really had buffs in Hearthstone history, and I think a lot of players were just really excited to see what would happen. And I think one of the coolest things was the players were already preemptively saying, even if things are broken from being over buffed or overtuned, I'm still really excited to play, and they really want to see more of that. So I know a lot of people at Blizzard at home are watching. We love these kinds of things, and being able to wake up one day and say, wow, like a big portion of my collection just got better in the game. It's really exciting to think about.
Yeah, unfortunately, we're not going to be able to jump into the Blitzchung Language Hacker match immediately. We're going to have to be going over to Boston versus Treadred in this one, which I believe I got word was a Mage Mirror match that's taking place.
Sure.
So amongst the rumblings of players that I had heard yesterday, one of the big things that were happening was because deck submission closed at actually 8:30 a.m. this morning, about half an hour before the event actually started. What that means is players had an opportunity to walk around and talk with the players, hear what the word for the Masters Tour was, what were they anticipating other players bring? And I'm curious at how many of these decisions were flex decisions that were made. And looking at the deck list in particular, we always see something a little bit interesting when it comes to the deck list here. Treads Red, once again, has brought something of a twist with them, and he's got an Alex Straza in his mage deck to couple with Luna's Pocket Galaxy.
Yeah, I mean, we saw that in Language Hacker's build, but Language Hacker went one higher with, like, Calighost and whatnot. It seems like this is a little bit of a trend when they identify a lot of warriors potentially being brought in. Alex Straza and Luna's Pocket Galaxy working really well hand in hand. And the reason why is because there's not a lot of, like, Fireball, Frostbolt ways to end the game through just pure damage. People who see Alex Straza and Mage traditionally think that they use it for a combo to end the game. But when you have Conjurers calling, Alex Straza just ends the game right there off of a 2-giant combination, and it just turns any mid-game sizable threat into game-ending damage.
Yeah, unchecked board instead is an unchecked game.
Yes, exactly. You know, and Alex Straza, if you think about it, is just direct damage to your opponent. You know, right now Boston's at 30. If Treadshead can deal Alex Straza, that's 15 damage out directly plus the 2 giants. Game over.
Sounds to me like the plan then is rumble for the board.
I agree. Treadsred is in this position where he has the ability to fight back for it. He can trade the giant, or he can invest into his mana now with the Luna's Pocket Galaxy. However, in a matchup like this, tempo is often king. You know, we see the Alex Straza in his hand, so things like the Luna's Pocket Galaxy, a little bit less impactful now that he has both Mountain Giants drawn.
It's an interesting turn for Treadsred. You know, the trade tells Boston pretty much that there is no Conjurers calling in Treadsred's hand. And if that's the case, what that means is that Boston is free to not fear this giant as much, I would say.
Yeah, Boston, I think that's a really good call. Ooh, Ray of Frost.
Spellbender down for Treadsred, though.
Yes, but that's where the second Ray of Frost can help keep it in place here. The big question is, what's that secret being developed, you know? And Boston can test a couple of things, but he can't test everything immediately before he wants to play, like, say, the Mountain Giant.
Yeah. At best, he's narrowing the range this turn. So that is something Boston has to think about, is if he's going to play Mountain Giant this turn, what that means is he needs to check the secret, because if he does not see a Mirror Entity pop up, or just a secret pop up in general, excuse me, that Mirror Entity is a major threat if you're going to play your own Mountain Giant in that spot. So wise, I think, to, in some capacity, check it first. It's hard for me to say what the actual ideal circumstance was here to play around the secrets that I think Treadsred is interested in using.
Yeah, there's 3 different possibilities that Boston can go for. He could just try to fight for more board advantage, because by playing the Mountain Giant and recognizing that Treadsred didn't have that Conjurer's Call in the previous turn, says, you know what, if you have Mountain Giants, we trade Mountain Giants, I still feel pretty confident. The second option is to go for a big Mana Cyclone turn, and the third is to go for a decisive Archmage Antonidas, build up so many resources by generating free fireballs.
I think that's the game plan for Boston here, too. You know, so many times when I have Mana Cyclone turns and I have Archmage Antonidas, I'm lost on what to do. I think in this spot, it's wise for Boston to probably look towards Archmage Antonidas.
Yeah, I think the way you could lose this game from Boston's point of view is to lose control of the board and then have to rely on freezes and get very fortunate with the spells off of Mana Cyclone, because you don't have enough mana to play Archmage Antonidas. And it's like we said, Treadsred already has shown that he didn't have the Conjurer's Calling, so he has to draw it from the top of the deck, and that's unlikely.
Luna's there for Boston, though. Perhaps not the most welcome sight. However, you know, Mage does not offer a ton of removal in the deck list. Like, I'm looking at this Archmage Antonidas from Boston and going, can we just plop this down? That's a quick recognition. Boston does not necessarily play quick.
He does not. In fact, Boston's kind of been struggling a little bit in the Grandmaster system over in Europe. I mean, for good reason. Europe is one of the most difficult, if not the most difficult region in Hearthstone. But coming out to a field like this, I think Boston has a lot to prove. I think a lot of fans might be wondering if he actually truly can hang with the best. And Boston is a very good player, and I think a lot of people may be underestimating him when they look at the Grandmaster field and they look at the other list of killers that are attending Vegas.
I'll tell you what, Treadsred is in heaps of trouble this turn.
Yeah, he just have no way to deal with it. His Muck Hunter doesn't kill the Antonidas because it's a 4 attack rusher, I believe.
5 attack.
5 attack rusher?
It summons 2/2/1s for your opponent.
Yeah, I mean, I don't care about the 2/1s nearly as much as Tony going down here.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, Treadsred got Zalae and Muck Hunter from Astral Rift, which was produced randomly.
Pretty solid cards.
But not in this spot.
Not in this spot. And
4 giants got traded into each other. All the mountain giants just gone by trading into each other.
Yeah, they could have just both said, you know what, let's just trade these cards and make sure that nothing happens. 7 mana, 4/4.
Boston, he's popping off here. This game's over.
Ray of Frost generates fireballs. He can set up a 2-turn lethal potentially here.
It's just there's just way too much for Treadsred to handle in this spot. I mean, he literally could elemental evocation, rip 2 fireballs. And the question, I think, is taking out the 4/4 or not. Where if Treadred's just going to play a 4/4, there's probably something up.
Yeah, I think, well, Treadred's clearly trying to invest his 4/4 to trade into the Antonidas and then...
Visualize the math here first for Boston. He knows those 2 attacks are happening.
Yeah. It's pretty safe to fireball
face
set up
twice.
the lethal. Yeah.
You go face twice, then Treadred's only defense is Alexstrasza Self, which leaves you with 2 fireballs for lethal next turn. Number 2 is if you fireball the Zalae, Archmage Antonidas is never dying in that spot, but do you have the damage to close in the following turn? The answer is yes. You have 12 + 7.
Yep.
So either
Seems
way,
pretty solvable.
the winning play was Antonidas' tempo with no value immediately.
That's a hard spot when you have like entire mana cycle in hand with Stargazer Luna. I felt like at that moment, one of my first instincts or impulses, because you drew the Stargazer Luna that turn, was like, why not just pop off and just do the mana cycle turn?
This turn for me has been the story of Boston and Grandmaster so far too, which you consider random effects over and over and over and over again, and you try to line up what your hand looks like. He's not going to lose from this spot, but if this was a spot where he's behind instead, you need to get these random effects earlier so that you can actually make a decision of what's going on. But Treadsred, you can see Dunzo in that one concedes, and it's on to game 2 from that point.
Well, that was that game 2 or was that game 1?
I believe I was told that was game 1. I could be wrong.
Oh, okay.
Excuse me, that was a match victory.
That was game 2, yeah.
Yeah, indeed it was. So that means a 2-0 for Boston in that one.
Yep, Boston being able to land that early game victory. Very nice. All these Grandmasters, we're going to be highlighting them. My bold prediction here, admirable. I'm not sure. I missed the very beginning of the show because I was kind of paying attention to how the bracket was shaping up and seeding. But my prediction, when producers came to us and asked us for really bold ones, I said 4 out of the top 8 would be Grandmasters because I truly believe in the quality of the players that we have. And I think that they have a leg up over some of the other players, largely because they've been playing specialists in a different fashion than other players. When you try to qualify for something like the Masters Tour Vegas, it's about volume. You're trying to play as many specialist tournaments as you can, and because it's like a larger field, it's really difficult to like understand the small nuances of the format versus just trying to play safe stuff. But one thing that I've found from the Grandmasters environment is that they're practicing specialists in a very aggressive but very elite level, and they're trying to figure out all the small nuances of the format. So some people might look at the people who qualify Open and say, well, this feels like another Open, right? Like you just bring a deck list that's good against the field. But I think the Grandmasters have done hyperbolic time chamber equivalent of training, and so I believe in them. Obviously, it's a bold prediction. It's very likely we can only get 1 or 2 Grandmasters at most. But I'm putting my faith in there. This is where I'm putting my horse this weekend.
Looking at lorisini versus Zalae is going to be the next match that we're covering here.
No response? Cool.
Well, I mean, I need to get to the next match that we're jumping into here. I'll talk about it in a second
right.
For this. We actually did not do bold predictions. There was just so much to talk about. We did talk about the open field size of it, though, and how I actually think that the preparation that the Grandmasters have had so far is potentially a disadvantage, where they're having to prepare specifically for opponents, as we've heard over and over again in interviews. Now, that being said, I think where their advantage is experience. They're used to playing high-stakes matches. They're used to playing big tournaments. That's how most of them got into the Grandmasters system, was by big stage experience over and over again throughout the year. So one of the things that I look at is you did hit the strongest note, I think, which is this isn't just another open tournament. We're looking at players who qualified through that system that you're competing against. So every single thought pattern that you're having is super likely that everyone else is doing the same thing. And it turns into that leveling war. Outguessing your opponents is going to be a key factor to winning.
Yep. Zalae, a Las Vegas native, having to drive a whopping 30 minutes to get here.
That's a bit much travel for him if you've paid much attention to Grandmaster Zalae for the Americas region.
That's true. Zalae loves the convenience of not having to go too much farther than his bedroom in order to compete.
I'm going to find the deck list here real quick because I'm seeing Coppertail Imposter in this list. Yeah. And one of the big talks that I have heard coming into this tournament is exactly a deck list for Warrior that's been cooking up which is known as Vancouver Warrior, which features many more ways to get aggressive in the matchup. And one of the things I think about specifically is playing the minions to the west. And so I'm going to look at secondary and tertiary decks to look for this. If not, that meant it was randomly generated, which indeed it was. But one of the big talks that I've heard about this Warrior deck coming into the tournament was the ability to get aggressive instead. And so, talks of Coppertail Imposter and Wargear in the same deck of Warrior has been a big theory that players have been approaching in a lot of these situations. Here, it was randomly generated. Obviously, we jumped into the middle of this game.
Yeah, it seems like, based off of a very cursory glance of Zalae's and lorisini's deck list, that lorisini is playing his tertiary deck that features Youthful Brewmaster, Snip Snap, Spellbreaker, Alex Straza, as well as the Archivist Elysiana. Very interesting sort of tech.
2 Sephorian Bombers as well.
Yeah, 2 Sephorian Bombers.
Very aggressive list. Zalae, he does end up having his own Archivist Elysiana in this matchup. You're not guaranteed to bounce it back. But you know what? One Archivist Elysiana is usually enough. Zalae, just right now, he's on the back foot. Both players have Dr. Boom set up, but lorisini's getting a lot of bombs here.
Yeah, it's pretty rare that Archivist Elysiana games end up going the distance of running a player completely out of resources and cards. It often just coming down to the tempo. One thing that's also been a dynamic that we've been paying attention to was when do bombs get drawn? We see that players went through different cycles of understanding when to shuffle bombs into the deck. And at one point, people were like thinking, "Oh, don't you want to like backload things so that you can just burst them all when you have more guaranteed damage?" But that's where things like Archivist Elysiana comes into play, where if you don't get the bombs early, you might end up having all those bombs getting replaced the moment they play Archivist Elysiana. So you have to be very mindful of that as the game continues to progress.
Seems like super interesting iterations to me as well, where, what's the value of tempo versus the value of backloading them all at once.
Right.
To me, that's been one of the most interesting progressions of not only the matchup, but just the deck list in general. We've seen players who tend to favor the on-curve plays build the deck more aggressively.
Absolutely. And so, I think based off that knowledge, Zalae not too afraid of just playing his Harrison and getting board tempo, because I do think the tempo is king in this matchup if you can afford it. Clearly that both these players are choosing to go for the late game's arm rings. That does, in my opinion, favor lorisini pretty slightly, because he does have a few more threats and a few more ways to generate value.
It's that Alex Straza I'm looking at.
Yeah, Alex Straza. Even having like double Sephorian Bomber just means that it matches up a little bit better against certain cards, but that's given value to things like Dynomatic.
Yeah, that's the thing with Sephorian Bomber for me, is that Dynomatic, still not a bad card in the matchup. And when you're able to nail a turn like this one with Dynomatic, you are absolutely thrilled to get a turn like that through.
Yeah, that's a big opportunity here for Zalae. He has Dynomatic, he's Clockwork Goblin, and he has Hero Power. He can even squeeze in other forms of tempo onto the board if he wants to. But this forces Lorenzini into situations like, do I brawl early? And, I mean, this is still fairly early in the Warrior Mirror, even though they're both on 10 mana crystals at this point.
It's like the way the matchup progresses, right? There's two ways it happens. Number one, a player snags tempo, is able to get aggressive. One player is playing defense the whole game. Number two, all the tools kind of mush into the middle, and you find parity, and it's efficient use, and then taking advantage of and capitalizing on your random outcomes that really ends up mattering in the matchup. And get a picture of lorisini finally up on board here.
Yep.
We're working with an entire weekend of production being crammed into the players showing up and registering to get this done. So apologize that it's coming in a little bit late, but thank you for your patience. In the meantime, though, it's hard to call who has the advantage for me in this one, just simply because of how little is going on for each player.
Yeah, and it seems like they're in conservation mode. You could see that Zalae was thinking the same thing as Lorenzini. They're not going to be playing their Clockwork Goblins unnecessarily if they have the opportunity to combine it with the Augmented Elic, or more importantly, utilize its Rush ability. They're going to do it like that. Delivery Drone finds Automaton, another Clockwork Goblin, and Coppertail Imposter.
I know the Zalae thought here. I put this card in my deck. I'm going to take it.
It doesn't seem like a bad line of thinking whatsoever. I think that Zalae's mind says, with all these bombs, maybe I can find a way to win tempo and deal damage.
Critical mass is an important tool. I will say that as these turns are panning out, the hero powers are actually quite equally matching up. And what that means for me is that I think Zalae has the advantage because of the 2 Omega assemblies that he has immediately.
Yeah, I mean, there's 2 Omega assemblies in lorisini's deck, but he's gotten things like unpowered Steambot that he can't utilize right now.
Yeah, something to note, too, is that after the secondary, tertiary decks, Zalae still has 4 1-cost cards in the deck where lorisini does not. He's got the lone copy of Town Crier left after that. I feel like the armor generation of Eternium Rover is very undervalued in a matchup like this, where over the course of time, it just provides you a lot of extra health. And that could be the difference in winning and losing tempo, is just the extra health.
Yeah, if you get like 8 to 12 health, that's a massive difference.
Yeah,
just offsetting the bombs.
I very somewhat jokingly, but somewhat seriously compare it to like getting the double your health potion in like a dungeon run, where it's like that's one of the most valuable resources you can get is health because your deck is stacked with expensive things to do.
Yes,
it's very strange.
It just gives you time to do things. I completely agree. I mean, even the bartender Bob that gives you that potion, that gives you +5 to your starting health.
Yeah.
Like small, you might think that's not that big, and you're like, you know what? I'm just gonna choose a friendly minion and add 3 copies of that into my Dalaran Heist deck instead. You have to be very careful, because if you don't have time to pull off your insanely overpowered combos in the Dalaran Heist, it's all for naught.
Yeah.
And the same thing with the Warrior. Warrior can excel so much with time. That's why you see so many decks scramble to pressure Warrior out of the game. They're trying to tempo them so early because they know that if they give Warrior that time, that life gain, they have no chance of winning in the late game.
That's why Shield Block's a good card.
Fair enough.
Just extra health.
Yeah, and it has synergy across the board.
2 Omega Devastators. I feel like I may have spoken too soon when 2 Omega Devastators show up in the next couple turns.
That he doesn't have enough resources.
I mean it offsets quick.
You also see that Zalae is just trying to find small 2-for-1 advantages, right? Like Spellbreaker shutting down both the microbots plus this unpowered Steambot. Just small things like that. Yeah, that's why a lot of players like control mirrors in a way, because they feel like they have a lot of opportunities to get those incremental advantages.
Agency. I like the Spellbreaker because it shifted it back to an underpowered Steambot.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't exactly an overpowered Steambot, but before. It was only a 310.
Yeah. It was powered, though. Now it's just underpowered. 0-3.
Maybe that card should have been buffed in the Boomsday Project.
Yeah, I think making it a 4-9 taunt for 4 mana, pretty reasonable.
Yeah, 4 mana, 4-9 taunt.
Lorisini going to take it really slow here. So this is an interesting spot where Lorisini says he's fine with taking damage here at the cost of, creating awkward turns for Zalae. This is kind of interesting. If he's been hand reading properly, Zalae's hand is going to be constructed of almost something exactly what it looks like, with the Omega Devastators in there, with Ziliax not being able to be properly utilized.
Yeah,
Elysiana, Brawl.
My only problem with this is that Zalae doesn't have to do anything right back.
Exactly.
And so you're basically saying, I'm willing to trade 6 life to draw another card here.
Yeah, I think against a lesser experienced opponent, or just not as strong as an opponent, this is going to be a stronger play. But for Zalae, he's in this situation a lot, and I think he fully understands how to take advantage of a spot like this. If your opponent's going to do nothing, and you have the lead, do nothing right back.
Right, and it's not like, I mean, in this position, if I was Zalae, I'd also just be like, well, he clearly has removal tools that he wants me to extend in, so I like that. Dr. Boom, Mad Genius, Blastmaster Boom was just drawn from Lorisini, but look at the underpowered Steambot taking space on the board.
Yeah.
That's a really clever thing that I wasn't thinking about. It's like, it ends up being a nuisance for Lorisini.
Definitely want a Harrison Jones here for Lorisini.
Yeah, stop the Wrench Caliber from shuffling another bomb in.
Yep.
You're gaining 8 life by doing this.
Oh, another Elec picked up as well. So that's another 4 bomb turn for Lorisini. And just going to take the damage yet again. I'm quite surprised by that.
And burning a card. He's at 10 cards.
Yeah, that to me is the surprising part. Is Lorisini does not necessarily have a board lead right now.
Yep.
So
I'm not goodness.
I'm not convinced burning cards here is necessarily proper.
Yeah.
I think this could be a very this could be a very costly spot for lorisini. Now, it could pay off in spades as well, but
yeah, if the bomb gets drawn, he benefits greatly from it.
start diffusing him.
Yeah, because not only do you avoid the damage, but you avoid the immediate draw as well, which means that your fatigue plan isn't accelerated, and you have that slight incremental gain on the Elysiana Wars.
I'm not seeing Elysiana in hand right now, though. Oh.
Oh, you're right.
I'm telling you, this is usually a clever spot, but I think lorisini has gone for it too quickly in this position. Zalae absolutely will know what to do here. You pressure your opponent. If they're going to burn a card.
Is the pressure through the Ziliax? Is it through the Militia Commander? Is it through the Omega Devastator?
I don't mind any of them. I think that this is probably the cleanest one for Zalae because it doesn't change the board state. And so when you're not changing the board state, can lorisini fall into the same style of plays? Zalae is totally okay with this position remaining right now. Nothing changed for lorisini this turn. So now what do you do?
Well, you have a hero power that helps you climb back on the board ever so slightly.
Sure, but it's just so important for me to draw up that play from Zalae. He said lorisini was willing to burn a card. I'm going to create status quo. Why change and give them incentive?
That's a fair question. Augmented Elic, Clockwork Goblin, Wrench Caliber, all available to lorisini this turn. Seems like he is going to go for the 4-bomb shuffle.
That will put, I think, 8 bombs in Zalae's deck now. I believe that's the second double bomb turn that lorisini has had. And so that does interest me for when Zalae wants to use Archivist Elysiana. I mean, that could be rapidly approaching.
Yeah, or even just holding 10 cards.
Holding 10 cards, half the deck bombs. I mean, with 2 Omega Assemblies, you are free to spend some stuff and then fill your hand back up.
Yeah, he has the opportunity to utilize some of these rush mechs and then use the Omega Assembly to climb back to 10 cards.
lorisini has built quite a nice, strong hand as well. Coin, get the 3rd mech.
Looking for something playable this turn, or maybe even just holding on to it.
Yeah, that to me is the big interest point here for Zalae.
I think he might be holding on.
Yeah, just keep status quo. I think he wants lorisini to. He's looking for perhaps 1 dead turn from lorisini to play Archivist Elysiana, but actually, I'm not sold that this will work because lorisini has so much left in hand that now the pressure is going to pour in to try to take Zalae off of an Elysiana turn, or for when he plays one, that there's a lot of pressure from lorisini on that side. This is quite a curious spot.
Yeah, and it looks like lorisini is favoring the Ziliax to magnetize. Might want to just get this unpowered Steambot off the board so that way he can have Blastmaster Boom come down a lot more freely.
Is that too greedy, though? Like, I'm thinking that's a lot of work for an extra Boom Bot.
Yeah, I think
thanks.
so.
Now, the real liability here to me is that lorisini is actually, running into minions with some of these Boom Bots at times. You ideally want to actually hit your opponent's face over and over again. So these are pretty ideal outcomes for lorisini right now.
Yep, able to climb back with some of the armor gain. Zalae defuse the bomb, all according to plan.
So now the question for Zalae is the fatigue game. Can he afford to play Archivist Elysiana to defuse at least 7 more bombs right now?
I mean, this looks like an opportunity for Zalae to even refill his hand again. He has Delivery Drone. To kill the Blastmaster Boom, maybe you brawl, but if the Blastmaster Boom survives, you're in a tough spot. You can't, I mean, you still have Dynamatic. The ideal scenario. And now Zalae can deliver a drone and go back to it. Picks up a Mega Devastator number 4.
Well, I am curious about Mechathune because what that means is Zalae is free to actually play the Archivist Elysiana earlier, and you do have an alternate game plan. However, I do know that Zalae is, that's somewhere off in turn 29 land, and we're only like in turn, 18 land here. He does not like to think that far ahead. He preaches a lot about ABC Hearthstone.
Yeah, fundamentals. That's probably the big thing about Zalae, and a lot of people that subscribe to that theory, like Ike, yourself, just like, sticking to the core things of what makes it really good, like hand strength, positioning, and aggression.
I'm definitely a mix of those two, because I take Mechathune.
You're definitely on the aggression side.
I take Mechathune every single time. I'm not even kidding. I have won so many games with dumb Mechathune turns, 2nd bomb defused.
Yeah, well, I keep Doomhammer every single time.
I wish I could cleanly explain this inside
Nope,
joke
there's
that was
no
made
way.
5 years ago.
There was a stupid video where I tried to recruit people to join Fight Night back in ESGN, and it was like this thing where I was mulliganing as a shaman, and I was clearly not paying attention to what I was mulliganing for, and I just kept Doomhammer.
Yeah.
I think I might have even kept 2 Doomhammers. I wasn't even paying attention. And then Admirable just makes fun of me because at the time, no one keeps Doomhammer. Fast forward to 4 years later when Karazhan comes out, or 3 years later, and everyone's like, well, we just got to keep Doomhammer, right, in order to get him. Turns out that I was a genius, and I didn't even know it.
To me, I'm going to elaborate this on even further. The whole shtick of the commercial was Frodan trying to recruit people around the office, explaining Hearthstone to them very poorly, and then at the end, someone using a search engine to type in, should I join Dan's Hearthstone team?
Right.
I made up the words because we were watching the video on silent, and the first thing I said was, I keep Doomhammer every single time. And as Dan marched around the office asking people,
will you join my Hearthstone team?
and talking about specifically how he keeps Doomhammer every single time.
My sales pitch.
I did not know what the actual words in it were, and then at the very end, I got the payoff of someone search engineering, should I join Dan's Hearthstone team, amidst such a dumb statement that I was making up that he was making at the time.
Right, and this was also the first time Admirable had ever met me.
Yeah.
So he was making fun of my very hard, strung together Hearthstone team. Yeah, but alas, of course.
It's a long story, but this is a long game.
Yeah, you haven't really missed that much here. lorisini takes 2 bombs. He is at 5, which does make it like one of those things where we have to pay attention to like his timing, but he is ahead on the board now. Zalae has taken some time to do nothing to use 3 bombs now.
Well, this is buying Zalae the liberty of perhaps hanging on to Elysiana at times. However, we have rapidly approached a situation where that's no longer going to be the case.
Right. I mean, he does want to answer this board, but
It's 4
to be
damage,
quite
I mean.
honest, there's only 4 power.
You're looking at 3 more microbots next turn, and Zalae doesn't have a way to actually start answering those. That damage definitely will add up. He's just trying to avoid a situation of chain a bunch of bombs together at once. And so his navigation is going to be, A, I need to check my opponent's Archivist Elysiana when it comes down, because I cannot let them Brewmaster it back if I have to Elysiana early. B is I can't take too much damage because I know that lorisini has Alexstrasza in the deck. I need to avoid that being a lethal blow. C, I need to not take too much chip damage and let this get out of hand, or else I'm just going to get tempoed out the rest of the game. So in this situation, Zalae is just going to risk bombs, straight up.
Yeah, I don't think he needs to worry about it as much anymore because by burning 2 bombs, he's offset the augmented Elec in one of those situations. And so him fighting back for tempo here, I think is perfectly justified. And of course, he's making up a little bit of that card difference to Archivist Elysiana by burning those bombs. Really smart play here from Zalae so far. Now, lorisini, if he wanted to develop big through the Alexstrasza, couldn't really do that. He has to utilize Omega Devastator right back at his opponent, or he's just going for the Alexstrasza. He doesn't even care.
So this position to me is quite curious because this represents an opportunity for lethal. You know, there's still a lot of bombs in Zalae's deck. It's unlikely that he draws that many in a row, and Ziliax is still there. So now there is an opportunity, I think, for Zalae to potentially punish a play like this.
This is a massive punish, in my opinion. I think this is another thing, too, that is a slight criticism against lorisini, is that Ziliax is really important to just nullify all the hard work of bombs in your opponent's deck, and he used it fairly liberally to gain 3 life.
Yeah, and in this case, Zalae gets an even bigger payoff, nullifying an entire turn with an entire tech card in your deck with Alexstrasza.
Yeah. So now you can trade in here. He can Ziliax on top of the Omega Devastator, keep the Divine Shield, force lorisini to use his hero power.
The timing of the Kaboom coming up is not the best for Zalae. It means that just a single Omega Devastator checks this.
Right.
But lorisini also has Spellbreaker in the deck.
Right.
They've been holding on the cards for a very long time. It's unlikely this succeeds. The biggest benefit is you get 7 extra health, and you get to connect for 7 damage at the same time.
Yeah. The most important thing is that it elicits a specific type of response from your opponent. So if you know your opponent's going to play an Omega Devastator, how do you pan it out afterwards? Zalae has the ability to utilize Clockwork Goblin and Blastmaster Boom if needed.
Now also just the delivery drone.
Delivery drone's also good. I didn't even notice that from the hero power.
The thing I'm looking at still is when this Archivist is coming down, there's still a lot of bombs loaded up. You can't use it too early, you can't use it too late. It's finding that balance, and that balance has a heavy variation in it.
Right. I don't know, apologies here, as I'm not, we joined in, part way through too, and we don't even have the ability to track what's going on exactly. We don't know how many bombs are in lorisini's deck, but at least there could be, well, now 2 bombs, because Zalae can set up the Wrench Caliber. Another Mega Devastator, another Clockwork Goblin.
Yeah.
What's happening here?
So that's an interesting spot to me, where Zalae is reaching like critical mass of bombs in lorisini's deck. I mean, there's Wrench Caliber and Clockwork Goblin this turn.
Right. But then, if it doesn't get drawn and lorisini is holding the Archivist Lysiana, he just invested all the bombs and he just gets destroyed.
True. So he's going to find the halfway point here. Fend off pressure, add pressure, and start clocking.
Right, because if he plays a Lysiana, there's still going to be 7 damage showing. At least.
And Zalae, honestly, he might be forcing an Elysiana turn here, which it still hasn't shown up, and now it does.
Right.
So I have to imagine lorisini's interested in that, but you're staring down 7 on the other side immediately. Like, this is dangerous if you play Elysiana here, and that's the situation Zalae's trying to create. He's trying to create uncertainty for lorisini and playing Archivist Elysiana. Think back to that Ziliax turns ago.
Clockwork Goblin.
A lot of bombs for
Bronze
lorisini, though.
Gatekeeper, and that Omega Devastator number 5 was already used for Zalae.
This is a big deal right here, that Bronze Gatekeeper.
Bomb. So Zalae has 3 or 4 bombs left in his deck, it seems like. Oh. Snip Snap. Snip Snap is big.
So,
it can destroy like this entire board.
Yeah, so 2 Snip Snaps offers 8 damage to board. Microbots would offer 3 more, and you have a Wrench Caliber loaded up. So if you went 3 Snip Snaps instead, each one's 4 damage basically. He would have 12 damage to the board in that case, but he wouldn't have the Microbots. But he also has Blastmaster Boom. He's very interested in attacking with his weapon this turn. He wants to connect with lorisini's face. This is not an easy turn. Snip Snap also offers the potential for additional burst damage in the right scenarios. So I think that Zalae's probably going for Clockwork Goblin into Blastmaster here.
If he wants to get the full boom bots, he has to swing with the weapon before playing Blastmaster Boom. He's going for it.
Look how interested he is in connecting damage to face as well. I think this is super important. He's taking the risk. And honestly, that might not pay off. I'm looking at a lot more bombs in lorisini's hand. And didn't connect all the damage, but connected enough.
But
that's
enough
lot.
because he can, now if he plays Elysiana, he's still in Bud's
2
spot.
bombs! 2 bombs wins!
1, 2 bombs! And
Wow.
that's a 2-0 for Zalae. What a spot. What a crazy finish. You know, that was
Aggressive
a lot
play
of damage at the very end. And I gotta admit that I wasn't really expecting a conclusion like that. Well done by Zalae.
Yeah, getting a look at where they played their match. And that's honestly the Blastmaster Boom spot to start pushing for damage, because lorisini's still just, all the cards are mating, there's still so many bombs left. That's kind of what I'm talking about with the Archivist Elysiana spots, where you want to simply pressure your opponent and put them into an opportunity where things can go south. If you can keep them off playing Elysiana, that's just as good as not having to have your own Elysiana. And we can see Zalae has it in there, but I feel like, to me, I'm a big proponent of not having that card in general, unless you intend to play it early in bomb scenarios, which Zalae found a way around even at that.
Yeah, and the most important thing, I think, was just the lack of options in lorisini's hand compared to the diverse amount of options in Zalae's hand. And I think you can kind of see how hand management of resources, especially in a matchup like Warrior versus Warrior, is really crucial. If I'm looking at lorisini, I think he threw away Ziliax a little bit too liberally. I think that he wasn't fighting enough for tempo, and he took a little bit too much damage. Remember those turns where he just kept passing, and Zalae's like 6 damage here, 6 damage there, another 4 chip here? Those kind of small advantages really rack up for Zalae to allow him to create a pressure plan and also force lorisini, who correctly identified, I can't play Elysiana safely in this spot. He's stuck in that position, and then, of course, you add in the fact that Zalae's like, well, I just get a little bit extra fortunate with the boom bots, and then I'm able to just stack my advantage. So I think it's a really good lesson on just like how you're able to leverage the resources, even if you're at an air quote disadvantage from the deck list, because if you look at it, having extra C4 bombers, having an Alex Straza, having a Youthful Brewmaster to bounce any of those bombs / Elysiana should give you a heavy advantage in the matchup, right? In theory. And Zalae was able to utilize that aggression in a very nice pocket, identified where his opponent's weaknesses, and was able to get the win.
Yep, and that means we're going to have to go to a quick break because we're still wrapping up round 1 coverage here, but we will have a little bit more to cover that's happening around round number 1 when we come back from that. So quick break, and when we jump back in, we're finishing up round number 1 and then headed into number 2 of the day.